On a dark night of August 8, 1963, a Royal Mail train was traveling from Glasgow to London. One of its coaches contained bags filled with banknotes, worth approximately £67 million in today's terms, or about 800 crore rupees. The train driver, Jack Mills, was speeding the engine through the pitch-black night. Suddenly, at a crossing, the signal's red light flashed on. This was unusual for the driver, as a red signal at that time and place made no sense. Nonetheless, Jack Mills applied the brakes immediately and stopped the train on a deserted path. For a few moments, silence enveloped everything. But hidden behind this silence was a master plan that would execute the century's biggest heist, the Great Train Robbery, in which the entire train was essentially looted. Welcome once again to Shadow Story 46 videos. Viewers, this story sounds like a movie script, but in real life, the robbers crafted a suspense-filled plan and looted millions of pounds from Britain's government train without firing a single shot. It all began months earlier when some notorious London criminals gathered to plot a new caper. Bruce Reynolds, the mastermind behind the plan, teamed up with a few accomplices to devise an unprecedented robbery. He had secret information about Britain's National Post Service, the Royal Mail. This intel came from a senior security officer at Royal Mail, whose name remains unknown. The information was that the Glasgow to London train had a special coach called High Value Packages, HVP. On a particular day, it would carry a massive amount of cash, and that's the coach they aimed to rob. Bruce Reynolds and his associates were indeed infamous criminals, but they had no experience in train robberies. So, they recruited another London gang with such expertise. This notorious group was known as the South Coast Raiders. Gradually, the team grew, and now more than 15 people were involved in the plan. They resolved to rob the government train without using guns. But this wasn't a simple hold-up where you stop the train and loot it. It required months of preparation. On August 7, 1963, at 6:50 p.m., the train departed from Glasgow Central Station bound for London. It was scheduled to arrive at London's Euston railway station the next morning at 4 a.m. The train had a total of 12 coaches, and 72 post office staff were on board to sort mail during the journey. This train was primarily run to deliver parcels and post to various cities. Therefore, it had to drop parcels at different stations without stopping. Whenever a station approached, the local post office staff would hang sacks on a special elevated rack. As the train passed the platform, it would slow down, and the on-board staff would grab the sacks using a net. Similarly, sacks meant for that station would be dropped onto the platform from the moving train. This process allowed mail to be distributed to various stations without halting. The coach targeted for the robbery wasn't yet attached to the train. It was safely parked at a railway station near Glasgow. It was called the HVP, or High Value Packages coach, because it mostly carried large sums of cash that people sent via money orders to other cities. In 1960, 3 years before this incident, the Post Office Investigation Branch, IB, had recommended installing security alarm systems in HVP coaches to enhance security. In 1961, these systems were fitted in 3 HVP coaches, and the older ones without alarms were kept in reserve. But on the day of the robbery, all the alarmed HVP coaches were out of service. So, a reserve coach, M3024M, was used, which had no security system. This was a major tip that the robbers received from a Royal Mail insider. When the train from Glasgow arrived at that station, the railway staff attached the HVP coach right after the engine, in the second position. This was the first tip the robbers got, but the second was even more crucial. Normally, HVP coaches carried around £300,000. However, because the previous week had been a bank holiday weekend, on the robbery day, it held nearly £3 million. And that was tip number 2. In other words, the coincidence that day was rare. 12 times more money, and coincidentally, the alarmed coach was faulty. But for the robbers, this was no coincidence, they had been planning for this exact day for months. The train departed from the station with the HVP coach attached. Night had fallen, and the 58-year-old driver, Jack Mills, was racing the train toward its destination. Meanwhile, the gang of robbers was hiding in the bushes near the railway tracks, lying in wait. Their plan was flawless. Around 3 a.m. on August 8, 1963, one gang member tampered with the signal at Sears Crossing. He covered the green light with a glove and used a battery to turn on the red light. Then, everyone hid and waited for the train. When the train approached Sears Crossing, the driver was surprised to see the red light, as trains, especially Royal Mail ones, didn't usually stop there. Still, Jack Mills braked and stopped the train right at the signal. Silence descended all around. The assistant driver, also called the second man, got off the train to contact the signalman via the lineside telephone. But the phone line was cut. This was part of the robbers' plan. As the second man turned back, robbers emerged from the bushes and subdued him. Some robbers climbed onto the engine from both sides and tried to capture the driver. When Jack Mills resisted, one robber hit him on the head with an iron rod, and he passed out on the driving seat. The robbers had come fully prepared. While chaos ensued in the engine above, some members detached the first two coaches after the engine from the rest of the train. Their plan was to take the train away from there. But where? About 1 kilometer from Sears Crossing was Bridego Bridge, where their truck was parked. They had brought a retired railway driver whose job was to drive the train to the bridge. So far, everything went according to plan, but now they faced their first hurdle. The driver they brought panicked upon seeing the controls of this new engine, as he had never operated it before. Forced to act, the robbers revived Jack Mills and compelled him to drive the train 1 kilometer ahead. Now, the engine and two coaches started moving again and were stopped at Bridego Bridge. During this, the staff and the remaining coaches left behind had no idea why the train had stopped. Upon reaching Bridego Bridge, the robbers broke open the HVP coach door, entered, injured the 5 staff members inside, tied them up with ropes, laid them face down, and began the loot. The coach had 128 sacks stuffed with cash, notes of £1, £5, and 10 shillings. The total weight was about 2.5 tons. The train was on the bridge, with a truck parked on the road below. They had only 15 minutes. They formed a human chain and loaded 120 out of 128 sacks into the truck. The remaining 8 were left due to lack of time. The plan had worked perfectly, but one mistake occurred at the end, which later proved instrumental in their capture. As they left, one robber told the bound staff, "Don't try to move from here for 30 minutes, or you'll lose your life." The robbers had an Austin Lodestar truck where they loaded all the cash, and 2 Land Rovers with the same number plate, BMG 757, to confuse witnesses. After the incident, they fled. After about a 45-minute drive, they reached their hideout around 4:30 a.m., which was about 43 kilometers from the site, near the village of Oakley. During this, they were listening to police chatter on VHF radio, which helped them. At the exact time they arrived at the hideout, the police learned of the robbery. But for now, they were elated. They partied there, even playing Monopoly with real banknotes. But this joy was short-lived. Soon, via radio, they learned the police were searching within a 50 kilometers radius. This idea came to the police from the staff member's statement about the 30-minute warning. The police knew that in half an hour, they could only be within 50 kilometers. Hearing this, the robbers panicked. Their plan to leave on Sunday was shifted to Friday. On Thursday, they divided all the money. The looted amount was around £2.5 million. According to some reports, each got about £150,000, a huge sum back then. In today's terms, that's about £3.9 million per person. The rest was distributed among minor helpers. Before Friday, they wiped their fingerprints from the hideout and assigned one person the duty to burn the place after they left, so no evidence remained. He took the money but fled without burning it. Meanwhile, the police were searching for them in the Buckinghamshire area. Helicopters circled overhead, police vehicles raced around, and national media was in an uproar. The police announced a £10,000 reward for information. A neighbor of the hideout came forward and told the police about unusual activity there on the morning of August 8. Based on suspicion, the police raided the hideout. It was Leatherslade Farmhouse, which the robbers had rented 3 months earlier. There, they found many clues linked to the robbery, such as empty sacks, mail, and a truck hastily painted yellow. The robbers had wiped their fingerprints before leaving, but some remained on the Monopoly game they played with real money. These fingerprints became a major breakthrough, as all had prior criminal records. They matched Scotland Yard's records, revealing the real culprits. Within days, the police arrested 14 out of 16. Only 2 escaped. One was the replacement train driver, whose name is unknown, and the other was the Royal Mail senior officer whose tip-off enabled the plan. To this day, that officer's identity remains unknown, as he never showed his face or revealed his name. The court declared it the century's biggest robbery and sentenced most gang members to 30 years in prison. After the robbery, Bridego Bridge became famously known as Train Robbers Bridge, which remains its informal name today. The 58-year-old driver Jack Mills never returned to his job due to the head injury and passed away 7 years later from the trauma. We hope you enjoyed this Shadow Story 46 video. Give it plenty of likes and shares. Thank you for your loving comments. See you in the next fantastic video.